Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
I write books because I tried to do something more useful and failed. And since I've been trained to write, I do that as a defense against total despair. And seeing people like you who are actively engaged in trying to salvage pieces of our wrecked lives gives me some hope that after all, we are not alone. It's a pleasure then to be here, to come and observe, and to the extent that it's possible to participate with you in the work that you're doing. I've been told that your focus today is on the theme of the awakening. I hope to contribute a little bit to your deliberations. And I shall do so by concentrating on the work of an African intellectual who worked for our awakening. His name was Sheikh Anta Diop. Now, if we are concerned with our awakening, it's because we've been asleep. Now, we were put to sleep by historical catastrophes. And you know, when people get into an accident, they need to go to sleep in order to survive the accident. If you are totally conscious when it happens, you won't survive. So sleep is sometimes useful. But after sleep, we have to wake. Now, since these catastrophes began, our minds have been kept in a sleepy state of ignorance through a series of cultural and intellectual anesthetics. Dope. Now, sometimes the dope is called religion, Islam, Christianity, and we go to it looking for relief. I mean, people don't take dope because they are evil, they take it because they're suffering and they think that it will ease their suffering. Now, whatever the different names of the dope that we fill ourselves with, the effect is the same, to make us think we are nothing. Now, the awakening means for us that we need to regain knowledge of ourselves. There's something that we are. To do that, we have first of all to end our addiction to the poisons that put us to sleep. Secondly, we need to cultivate healing values that will help us remake ourselves and then remake the universe. And such work requires careful preparation aimed at analyzing and seeing through the false values directed against us. After that, we also need to identify the regenerative values and put them at the center of our own conversations, our behavior, and our institutions. You see, I'm not talking about speeches. I mean conversations, because speeches are wonderful events, but they're just events, they're not processes. They happen and then they can be forgotten. Conversations we always have, every day, and the things we do every day are more important than the fantastic things we do once in a while and forget them. Behavior, because it is possible for us to know what is right to do and even to say it, to utter it. But if we cannot integrate it into our behavior, it is worse than useless, because it serves only as a mask for the wrong things that we do. Now, somebody who does evil and doesn't know how to hide it is less dangerous than somebody who does evil but is smart enough and knows the words to cover. Yes. Institutions, because our behavior, our words, everything we do right is ephemeral as long as it's not anchored in something lasting. Because institutions help us maintain the good that we have and weed out the evil that is bothering us. In other words, the meaning of our awakening is that we aspire to create a new way of life. But awakening is not a simple process. An awakening that is hasty or brutal is bound to be incomplete. A deep, thorough, lasting awakening has to be well thought out, unhurried, slow and gentle, like good rain, like good lovemaking. Slow, gentle, well thought out. Now, there is a danger in incomplete, hurried awakening, because the body gets shaken, it's hustled into action while the mind is really still asleep. The result is sleepwalking. Physical action without mental, intellectual, spiritual clarity. And the outcome of such action is predictable. It's a massacre of courageous but poorly prepared souls. A complete awakening, on the other hand, is well prepared. It's a process in which the body is not rushed into rising until the mind has woken, until the mind has taken stock of the situation, until the mind has planned the most effective routes to action and made room for contingencies, so that if a chosen route happens to be blocked, alternative routes stay open. Because motion is important, but it is the path followed that gives motion its meaning. And the path is important, but it's the goal that gives the path its meaning.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Friday, May 9th, 2014. So I have been told. That was our author, Mr. Ayi Kwei Armah, giving a talk that was a few years back, not the most recent, but I think some constructive insight from the person responsible for the book we have been studying for a few weeks now, 2000 Seasons. You can check out the entire video segment on YouTube. It's under the heading. You can just put in Ayi Kwei Armah and Awakening, and it should pop up. And he gives a pretty nice presentation. His thoughts on what awakening means, that metaphor for people coming into a deeper, accurate understanding of the world we live in as dominated by racism, white supremacy. We will go ahead and get started. We are on chapter 4 in 2000 Seasons. We will be picking up the text on PDF page 147, book page. And when I say book page, I mean if you have the PDF, you can see the actual book pages in the bottom right corner. It would be book page 131. For folks who have different hard copies, I guess you might want to add maybe 10 pages to that or so to get an approximation. We'll be picking up specifically the sentence that says, "That same day before the sun had left its height, the great drums were beaten a second time." It's about midway down the page, book page 131 of the PDF, PDF page 147. You'll see where we're getting started at. At any rate, we'll go ahead and get started. Ayi Kwei Armah, 2000 Seasons, Context of White Supremacy. That same day, before the sun had left its height, the great drums were beaten a second time, and the people summoned to another meeting in the open place. This time, Isanusi did not speak. He did not appear at all. In his place, it was Odumfer who spoke, telling the unbelieving assembly words the king had bid him say, that Isanusi had that morning betrayed his king and lied to the people, that the white men had come as friends, not as destroyers, that for everything the white men took from us, they would bring us goods of great benefit, that the white men's road was a wise road, it would profit our souls to follow. Odumfer, also raising high the spokesman's staff, told the people the king and his elders had decided to punish Isanusi for his infidelity to them, that Isanusi would be an outcast till the end of his days, that no woman, no man, no child was to give him help in any way, not a drop of water, not a grain of food, for Isanusi had gone mad and like a rabid beast attacked the honor of his king. The morning after, those already past their last initiation, we were not even close to our first then, marched to the palace, intending to tell the king the white destroyers must go. Inside the palace, the king and his flatterers were still conversing and drinking the new drink with the white men. The white men had told their guards what to do if men came menacing the tranquility within the palace. The guards' weapons barked long that morning. There was no counting the numbers of our people who died then. Their corpses were left around the palace for 3 days, a warning to all who still had the spirit to pit themselves against the king's friendship with the white destroyers. Chapter 5. The Dance of Love. All this was before the time when we of our age began our initiations. For us, a beautiful time, time of friendship, time of learning, when in the blindness of childhood we knew only of our own growing powers, but of the weakening, the destruction of the power of our people, we were completely ignorant. Before everything came the games of childhood, games and dances we loved for themselves. In fuller growth afterwards, we discovered sharp, sweet surprises hidden in each to help us at every succeeding level in our quest after the fundi's mastery. We moved first to the skills of protection. Here almost all reached the beginnings of the fundi's mastery. The teachers told us before the dances of recapitulation and rest, you are welcome to deepen yourselves here if it is in you to make yourselves experts in the arts of protection. Whatever your decision, go learn the skills taught by other teachers. If you come back, we shall be glad to go forward with you in your deepening. May your going be good. We came to the skills of farming. A fourth of us, the largest portion in any season, chose that level for their self-deepening. We came to the skills of hunting. Not many chose to deepen themselves here, though a seventh of our number reached the skills for beginning experts. We moved through the seasons of fishing and rowing, seasons of building, of carving, of working leather, of turning metal, of molding clay, of weaving cloth, seasons of the healing arts, each season with its riddles, its proverbs, and its songs, its dances, pleasant seasons in which skills already learned found constant deepening. At the last initiation, beyond all the open initiations, there were 20 left of us, girls and boys who had reached skill enough to have chosen deepening at any level, but had gone beyond every season, not having found the one vocation strong enough to draw our souls to it. The teaching masters gathered together, looked at us, and smiled, a certain smile. There was so much we could not understand those days. The teachers told us quietly that the way of experts had become a tricky way. They told us it would always be fatal to our arts to misuse the skills we had learned. The skills themselves were mere light shells needing to be filled out with substance coming from our souls. They warned us never to turn these skills to the service of things separate from the way. This would be the most difficult thing, for we would learn, they told us, that no fundi could work effectively when torn away from power, and yet power in these times lived far, immeasurably far from the way. This distance from the seats of power to the way, this distance now separating our way from power usurped against our people and our way, this distance would be the measure of the fundi's pain. They told us there was no life sweeter than that of the fundi, in the bosom of his people, if his people knew their way. But the life of a fundi, whose people have lost their way, is pain. All the excellence of such a fundi's craft is turned to trash. His skills are useless in the face of his people's destruction, and it is easy as slipping on a river stone to see his craftsmanship actually turned like a weapon against his people. There was so much of this talk of ways, of our way, the way, we did not then understand. Then the masters began to speak in riddles, deliberately pitched beyond our age, riddles easy to remember for their sound, hard to understand for their meaning. They talked of the imminence of an initiation beyond all initiations, and we could only listen in our ignorance. We asked them questions. Some they answered, including one we all wanted answered about the abandoned ship. When we had been to Poano, after we had crossed the barrier and gone beyond Poano itself, we had seen the white ship abandoned within sight of land, there in the shallow sea. We had asked about it. The fundi of the rowing art had said the time had not yet come to talk of that. Now, an older man told us it was believed the white man in command of that ship, beset by the avenging spirits of thousands he had already destroyed, this was a carrier of slaves to their doom, ran abruptly mad, lost the skill he had misused so long, and ran the ship with demented fury in the irresistible direction forced on him by the avenging spirits of his victims. His ship, its strength broken, was trapped where the waves, meeting higher sea ground, break into surf, continuing their forward motion with great speed but little depth, till the last fingers of foam tire out, able to go no farther on the heated sand. What happened to those still on the ship? Such questions we asked, but at the time no one knew any answers. You will hear words from people, the older fundi said, but they are sounds not coming from any real events. They come from the teller's particular imagination, no more knowing than your own. 1,000 varying things happened before our soul was open to absorb their meaning. The veils of the first initiation, the second initiation, and the third, all these veils hid parts of the truth from us, It was not till the veil of the final initiation had been torn, a terrible tearing, that understanding broke in on our violated soul. Then it was that uncomprehended stories, senseless fragments, joined other pieces from which they had been forced apart, and the truth of our lives was whole, a terrible wholeness. But this we learned then, that we came from drier places, wide open spaces, where eyes can see across fields like seeing across seawater. Trees cut your vision, but they are few, solitary, almost strangers in the place. This place, our present home, is more abundant. The soil here is softer, the rain incomparably more generous. Here the rainmaker is a foolish joke. But it was not the abundance of the place that pulled us. It was something in our people we would not allow to get destroyed. We would rather move from scenes of our ancestors, from places and from things animated with their memory, than let the spirit of those same ancestors, the spirit of those yet to come, the spirit of all our people be destroyed. We moved. What we sought was darkness, the darkness of forests, darkness to let broken things grow whole again, darkness, origin of life. Behind us, we thought we had forever left the white abomination, violence in its pure state, hatred unmixed. Change, or we will kill you, the first white predators, those from the desert, had said. Believe in our road. Abandon your way. Forget your ancestors. Forget your posterity. Forget who your people are. Forget your very selves, and we will let your bodies live. Yes, we were told to kill our soul so our bodies might live. Into these forsaken bodies, alien, fictitious souls were to be poured to do the bidding, do the work of others. Slavery was shown us, held up to us as the beautiful road, the right road of our lives. Among us, the destroyers raised from human refuse, ludicrous prophets preaching acceptance of slavery, love of pain inflicted upon us, love of destruction directed against us. Half our people, more, the will of men is weak in times like this, weary of fighting for the spirit's life against a bloody, crazy enemy, bent before the predators, stayed, emptied their bodies of their own souls, and took into themselves alien spirits, destroyed, destructive minds. The other half, less, the will of human beings is weak in times like this, left land, trees, stones, all the things that had filled their lives with recognition, taking only the spirit of a people with them on their way. Beyond mountains and boglands, we sought the safety of these forests and these grasslands that are now our home. Now, too, we began to understand descent. We thought of descent of the body, bloodline running through mothers, life's creators here. We thought of descent of the spirit, descent of skills passing through experts to novices, descent of the mind, the mental line through teachers, passers on of knowledge about paths, knowledge about the way along which the people in body will be kept together with the people in spirit, the body of our people with our soul. Then we went into the forests, our minds still filled with prohibitions, with fables of gods and spirits. The undetermined stayed bound within these prohibitions created only to measure growth. Those among us with the will to grow discarded each prohibition as readily as we found there was no more sense in it. The circle of our craft, the circle of our friendship grew closer, and our affection deeper. In the riddles, we found strings not to tie the mind, but to guide the seeker, provided the search was serious. So in the forests, we found a carefully created way of growth, where, following our urge to reach the height of the fundi's art, we came at length to a greater understanding of our soul, our gift, along the way. Then began that initiation beyond initiations of which the fundis had spoken. We whose dedication had not yet been drawn to any of the particular arts, we were left to float to the knowledge of a craftsmanship of the soul, the vocation of those who used to be the soul guide of our people, the rememberers of the way, but who had for seasons and seasons, hundreds and hundreds of seasons now, become outcasts, the power of the people having fallen into hands animated by rotten souls, hustlers, who, if they have skills, will use them not for healing, not for keeping our people's body and our people's soul together, but for killing, for splitting the soul and keeping it a thing apart from zombie bodies. There were 20 of us, 11 girls growing into women, 9 boys growing into men. In the natural growth of our friendship, in the pursuit of our vocation, we wandered against the force of all unexplainable prohibitions into the forbidden grove, the grove of sources intent not on destroying, but on seeking. It was on this search that, unsuspecting, we found Isanusi in the grove and knew him finally not for a madman, but for a fundi whose art went beyond any skill of the body, whose mastery reached the consciousness itself of our people. He whose greatest desire, whose vocation it was to keep the knowledge of our way, the way, from destruction, to bring it back to an oblivious people, all else failing, at least as remembrance. He whose highest hope it was to live the way as purpose, the way as the purpose of our people. Isanusi was not disturbed, though it was a great surprise to him that so many of us had come in this one season of initiation, where in the past each generation had given barely one. He asked us if truly all of us had reached the skills of the beginning fundi, yet still desired to move on at every level. We told him it was so. He smiled. We did not know then what a testing time our presence would create for him, how much he had yearned for an end to his fundamental loneliness, how we brought with us the promise of its ending and the beginning of things closer to his spirit, closer to our way, closer to the way. But because of what we had yet to know, he would be forced to wait, to risk our complete disappearance and his plunge back into the destructive loneliness of his soul, because we had yet to know. He tried even then to tell us. He said words about what had happened to our people, gave us warnings to beware the surface of things, to stay clear of the hypocrites of power if we could not ourselves destroy them. We did not understand him. Had we understood then, we would not have left him. We would have stayed there in the secret grove with him, and there begun the search for paths leading to our way, the way. We did not understand him, though his words themselves called for respect. And so, uncomprehending, we listened. Then we took our leave of him. The long preparation for womanhood, the preparation for manhood, both had come to an end. Energies we had never had to use, strengths we had not thought we possessed, had risen in us for the tasks of the final open initiation. Now it was time to find rest for these energies. The time of love had come. The last, the greatest dance of all our youth would mark the passage into adulthood. The dance of love is a dance of choice also. It has always been the custom at this festival that the growing women of the age, if they are already of a mind to do so, choose the growing men they wish to share their lives with. Concerning most of the choices of our season, we were already sure. It is not easy to hide any kind of love, and young love loathes disguise. There were still 20 of that age, 11 female, 9 male, whose particular preferences we could not predict. It was not that there was a dearth of affection among us. On the contrary, among the 20, there was so much unforced affection of a quality so intense that it was clear this would be no pairing love, but something greater, embracing all our group. That the last great dance would be the pairing dance itself, that raised a quiet, suspended interest in all the season's youth. There was a waiting to see how a group that seemed to live beyond the need of pairing would weave itself into the purpose of the dance. There was just one remaining matter for anxiety. The king, before the completion of preparations for the dance of love, had called for the mother, the father, and the uncles of Abena, one among the 11 girls, and asked them if any youth had set his mind to her. Abena had a mind that had filled every Fundi teacher's mind with joy. But it was not her mind. It was simply the beauty of her body that made the king wish to set her apart for his son. For Koranche, the king, had a son. This son, Bentun, was his name chosen after another of our disastrous kings. Bentun was also of our age, but we did not grow up knowing him. It was known the king Koranche had suffered in his childhood from the necessity of dragging his feeble wits and lethargic body in the initiations after children younger than himself. When then his son Bentun reached the age of the first initiation, the king decided it would be better for future kings to have an upbringing entirely different from others of their age. The king sent the boy to the coast, to Poano, where he arranged for his raising in the largest of the white destroyer's stone places. It was said here the white destroyers raised the boy to be their servant, but so far have we fallen in our exile from the way, even the service of white men seemed honor enough to the king Koranche. 12 seasons later, Bentum was sent beyond the seas with some white traders to their country, a cold place where his soul, so we have heard, was voided out of him at once. An alien language forced into his throat, and a name to make dogs bark in derision was given him. Bradford George. That was not the end. Before it was time for him to return to Poano, to the big stone place, there the white men thrust on him a wife. Ah, cruel ruse! In this the white men did their victim most grievous injury, for they chose for his companionship a creature more than 20 seasons past the poor prince's age, a dry white woman, more than half deaf, blind in one eye, with a body so dead it was whispered here she never could feel her husband enter her, and would not know what to do with him in any case. The king Koranche asked Abana's people if their child was taken. They replied this was one of the children more concerned to be a fundi than to be taken for a wife. She had not been taken. The king asked no more. For the final dance, the dance of love, the dance of choice, the king announced a sudden change in paths. This has always been the dance of selection. 3 circles dance, the girls of the season within, the pairs of the last adult generation next, then without the boys of the season. Between any 2 dancers in the second circle there is the space of a single dancing step, 1 swift beat and no more. The dancers in the center make their choices one by one. But to reach her choice in the outer circle, each growing girl has to dance with skill enough to cut through the middle circle untouched by any member of the older pairs, so reaching the welcome of the male outer circle dancing still. Once there, she is entirely free to dance to the lover of her choice. The middle circle is easier to breach in the beginning of the dance. Close to the dance's end, it moves closer to the shrunken core, and its tightness makes it so that only with the greatest skill can any dancer break through it. It is a small part of the way to let the shakiest dancers be choice makers first. The dancer most known for her grace and skill, in our time this was Abena. She also, who was most desired, is last to be closed within the tightened middle circle. This was the sudden change in paths, the day of the dance of love. It was the king's wish that the girl left last within the middle circle should choose not a dancer from among ourselves, but a special guest of honor he, the king, was bringing us. We did not have to wait to find out who this special creature was. The Prince Bentoon, renamed Bradford George, voided of his soul, had fled his white cripple of a wife, and come home looking for beauty and goodness to sacrifice to his murdered soul. The announcement produced a high-nerved eagerness in all the females in the inner circle. At other times, they would have strained from pride alone to come as near the end as possible. Now they competed to pierce the middle circle first, avoiding the unbeloved prince. The king Koranche and his courtiers came. The people who desired to watch the dance of love had gathered already in the center of the town. The dance began. The prince sat in the very center of the dance, where, according to the way only the dancers ought to be, his clothes a bloody red and glistening with bits of metal even in the soft light of the moon. Afua broke through the middle circle first. Anxiety robbed her dancing of its beauty, but her fortune this night was good, and she was not stopped. She chose Mofolo, an unsurprising choice. Subira danced her way out next and found Birago waiting, a happy choice. Asema danced to Bampo. Manan chose Igun and caused Mungai a bitter disappointment. Ekua chose Kanadu. Ronke chose Ayodele. Rukia went to Oko. Why break our ears with all the names, all the choices? Abena did not vie with the other girls to seize the easy chance. That had never been her way. And then there were 11 girls left, and the dance became a thing of swift surprises. For in place of the one girl who should have leapt in readiness to breach the middle circle, 10 girls jumped as if the spirit animating them had turned them all into one individual person. They danced like one. The dancers of the middle circle were still digesting their surprise when, as swiftly as the 10 had begun, each found her exact simultaneous space and danced out triumphant to the circle of the boys, a wonder taking breath. The 10 did not divide their choice. When they reached the outer circle, they were content to dance together near the 9 of us, those like themselves, still seeking our final vocation. There had been no separate choices at all. The 10 had chosen the 9 together, a most unusual choice. Selection filled with a nameless beauty. Abena, as yet, had found no liberating space. She danced alone in the center of the middle circle. Close to her, the sitting prince looked up at her and grinned like a rodent in response. The king now ordered the dance stopped a while and bade his faithful dotard Odumfer make another speech. Odumfer told us to remember the prince had also had his initiation, an initiation greater than any that he had been to the white men's land, that this made him almost the equal of white men, and it was therefore only fitting that the best of our women should become the companion of his days. That said, Odumfer sat. The king motioned, smiling, for the continuation of the dance. Abena danced. She danced to make the beholding heart ache with desire for closeness to such grace, such fluid beauty. She danced long, and her dancing was a dance of trances, dance of the soul in thought. Her body itself, that moved little. It turned round the redness of the seated prince there in the center, and it seemed as if it was all her intention to dance her best and then to succumb to this prince chosen for her. But when the silence of admiration was deepest in its descent upon those watching her, dancers, watchers, even the prince with the ridiculous name, Abena cut a step unexpected in its speed, and without one halt she slipped untouched past the dancers of the middle circle, and she came to us. We did not wait. The dance of love takes the dancers always to the forest. The remembrance says the first such dance was no dance, but the hot flight of forbidden lovers from their elders' bloody anger. It is a small part of the way for the chosen to fly with their beloved, seeking the safety of the forests till the anger of the thwarted elders turns to wisdom. Willing messengers, secretly connecting the lovers with what they have fled, bring food and news to soften the hardness of forest life. Hardness that joins real lovers together. hardness that destroys the foolishness of mere infatuation. The pairs found the places of their secrecy not far from the town Anoa. They looked at us with warnings and invitations in their eyes when instead of staying with them, we pressed on into unfrequented parts. From the third grove onward, there was no one else with us. We looked behind us to make sure. There was no cause for anxiety. The others were far behind, eager to begin savoring the happiness of their pairing. They had called to us, telling us we could still break into pairs and stay near them. We laughed with them, but ran on. We ran through the third grove and the fourth. Under the slender alari trees, we stopped for rest. All of us had come. Pili and Ndela, Suma and Kwezi, Manda and Ude, Tawi and Dovi, Ankoanda and Sobo, Liamba and Mokili, Kinia and Lini, Maka'a and Ashale, Onoa and Kamara, then Naita, then Abena. We climbed up the tall alari trunks, where at the top the branches grew slenderest. We leaned on them and made them bend till they brought us to other branches high above the ground. 130 branches bent separately with the succeeding weight of each of us and brought us with no visible trace of our passage to the river's hidden arm. Past the waterfall feeding the river, we ran till near the spring of Noliwe and Ngome. The silence of the place entered us, and we stopped running, stopped talking. At the spring, where last we had found Isanusi, we searched for him, but he was not to be found. We rested, then worked to build ourselves a place to stay. Food we found and gathered, not in abundance, but sufficient. The second day, Abena asked a question that had been on all our minds. What were we going to do? It was not her opinion we should return. It seemed impossible to her that the king would ever acquiesce in her refusal and ours to do his will. She was for our finding entirely new directions. Though what these directions were, she could not say, simply declaring herself ready to think with every one of us. The truth of her words, added to our own unreadiness, unsettled us. Ndela asked Abena where she thought these entirely new directions could lie. Abena repeated she did not know for certain, but said if we were all willing to think and to search, it would be joy to her to search and think with all. That night we did not sleep well. Context of White Supremacy. The number to dial for folks who would like to participate in the study session, 760-569-7676. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. The number again, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. If you do not want to use your phone, you can dial in using the free flash player. If you're at Black Talk Radio Network, you can just press the button in the center of the page. It says call the show. It will connect you free. It works anywhere in the world. If you are not at Black Talk Radio Network, the address that you can put in is tiny, tiny.cc/1 race. The address again, tiny, tiny.cc/1 race. If you put the URL in, just look on the left side of the page. You'll see the link for the flash player. Click it. Once you do so, it will open a small window on your page. You'll see on the top line, it'll be a drop-down menu. You can pick the number, which I just read out, which again is 760-569-7676. The code is 564-943. And then the bottom line, third line, you can put in random keys, nickname. If you feel comfortable using your real name, that's fine too. But that last line, once you type in whatever you're going to type, click the green button. You'll see it right there to connect you. It will sound as good as your internet access allows. If you have really fast, spiffy internet, it will sound great. If your internet is a little sluggish, then it won't sound so good. But it should work. It's free anywhere in the world. With that, we will go ahead and get started. I will go ahead and get the folks who have chimed in. Again, if you all could remember, if you are in a noisy environment, if you could do your best to kind of make sure the background noise is okay. Use your mute button. If you know you're in a noisy environment, just mute yourself so that we're not picking up all that extra noise, and then unmute when you want to speak, but just try to watch the background noise. It can be a little distracting for myself and other folks who are attempting to listen and or participate. Thank you kindly. The folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. Feel free to chime in.
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I'm a little hoarse tonight, but I hope I'm audible. Okay, I think we left off last week with Insinuse, who is a utterer, and I've noticed that these utterers comes in threes, and basically an utterance is like I guess a prophecy, and then the other two will verify what was said the first time. But anyway, Synopsis was speaking, and he was giving the 4 wishes of the white man, and he was giving his views because he was a truthful person. So there was a spy among them. Osipha. Okay, I believe that he wanted to run and tell. He's a hater. So he tells him to stop and listen, and we'll all approach the king and tell him what we want. So he stayed. They went to the king. Evidently the king did not want to hear what they had to say. And the white men had already ordered the guards to take out anybody that interfered with them in the palace. So there was a mass killing, and they left the bodies laying there for 3 days to send a message to the other people who would come against the king and his intentions. And his intentions were to go along with the white destroyers. The king's way was not the way of reciprocity. He was being used by the white destroyers to basically misguide the people. So we picked up from there, and they're getting ready to go into their initiations, which the initiations, I gather, is like a phase of life, and it's basically, I guess, 4 or 5 different phases of life that you go through: childhood, adulthood, marriage, and then the preparation, I guess, for ancestry or whatever. But anyway, in the meantime, doing some of your initiations, you go the way of the fundi, which is to master a skill. And that skill, the book pointed out, is like an outer shell. In other words, if you become a fundi, it's sort of like when we work in our society, you should not become your job. You have a life outside of the job. The job is just used as a means to make a living. So, as a fundi, that is the outer shell, and you're supposed to have substance to fill that skill. And so as they're going through their initiations, then there's ceremonial dance, and I'll mute my line from there because King Koranche has a son, and I'll let someone else elaborate on that. Thanks for taking the call.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Gus, to the other callers and listeners. I made a couple of observations, and it was very enjoyable to read this particular chapter, The Dance of Love, because it greatly details ritual drama and that is something that rituals were a part of, the culture and necessary to move on to the next phase and be an integral part of the community. So I thought the author did a wonderful job with detailing exactly what these young people had to go through. With regard to their skills, the farming and the building and the carving and the working of leather, to become experts. It was described as a self-deepening, and the author described that it was required in all areas to master the skills needed to serve the community for its survival and advancement. And then when one particular vocation spoke to the soul, it was one with the person who practiced it and with the people as well. So it was as if the spirit chose the craft of the newly initiated fundi for the survival of society. The learning and the deepening was done through spirit, in the form of the initiation, which is what the ritual drama basically was. And I contrasted it with today, where learning is like the opposite. The young people learn as objects, focusing on standardized subjects that are chosen for them. It has nothing to do with spirit, and very little of it, as it's given to them, is of value to the needs of the black community for our survival. So I noticed like there was like a major contrast there. With regard to how the author described that there was no life sweeter than the life of a fundi in the bosom of his people, if his people knew their way. And I thought about how that was like a person who knows a whole lot about something that they know that will help their people, but because their information, in addition to being and living examples of what they know, the expertise that they have is not popular, and the people who they want to reach suffer. So that is extremely painful, and I think that, like, as counter-racists, that we can all identify with that. And, often the people who you're trying to help actually resent you for having this life-saving information to share. So I thought that was interesting. And also later on in the chapter, when it talks about rivers and springs, I noticed that the waters were named after the female pathfinders, No Leeway and Ningome, and even the town was named after, the village was named after Anoa, the prophetess. So I thought that was significant as well. And it shows you the female influence, even though the destroyers had their way. But I'll mute my line and I'll give somebody else a chance. But I'm enjoying the book.
Any other folks have commentary they would like to share? If anybody's on the line that hasn't spoken, everyone who has a hand up, line should be open. Any other folks who are listening in, if you have comments you would like to share, feel free to participate.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
There was a section in there where it talked about we had to kill off our soul to take on the alien soul, possess us or something to that effect. I forgot the exact words,
but it reminded me of what Amos Wilson said. I think the book Amos Wilson was writing in was Black on Black Violence, and he said we are an alienated people, meaning that we are not ourselves. We are directed by like alien forces controlling our souls. And the possessive demon that controls us is the one that determines. Now, Amos Wilson wasn't speaking in spooky kind of terms, but I noticed that throughout this book, there's a lot of references to deities and things like that, and the declining souls of ancestors and something to that effect, that it's like we're too reliant on forces outside of us to solve our problems, and instead of turning to ourselves. But I guess that was interesting that he had mentioned about the killing of our souls and allowing others to aliens to take control of our bodies. So I just want to mention that part.
Good evening, everyone. This is Karma. May I be heard clearly or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have a cousin that I've qualified as a genius, and he often says to me when he shows up at the house, "Girl, you need to listen to me because white people want to get it so that you have to go to them for everything." And then we were changing pressure switch on a water well at that time. He's like, listen up. But that struck me as that statement was so sad, where it said, no Sunday could work effectively away from power. And it's like, it's just the saddest thing in the world. It is so true. You need the structure that power brings, and you need the resources that power brings in order to become a Fundy, to become the best at what you do. Otherwise, you're stuck trying to survive, trying to find food, clothing, and shelter, and you certainly don't have time to master the annals of history. That's just the saddest thing in the world, that no Fundy could work effectively away from power. I don't know. I was just really brokenhearted by that. It was so true. Anyway, that was my observation.
Wow. Let's see. Going back a little bit, we're in chapter 5. This chapter is very long. We are not going to conclude chapter 5 today, and it's so long that I don't think we will conclude chapter 5 next week either. I think I said that at the very beginning in this study session that the chapters are not even, and some of them are very long, so that we're not going to be able to do clean chapter breaks for the most part during the study session. So we will be in chapter 5 for a while. Some of the folks who have read this book feel that this is the most important chapter in the book, the current chapter that we're on, The Dance of Love. We are still pretty early in it. Might have more reflections on it once we get done with the second audio segment today, but just something to kind of keep in mind as we proceed through chapter 5. But with the Dance of Love, when they're talking about this is supposed to be a ritual where the female makes her choice of a partner. I thought the paragraph, this is on, for me, it's PDF page 141, and that's the book page. Sorry, I'm on with the PDF document, but it's the actual book page 141, page number at the bottom right corner. So I guess you could add 10 pages to that and see if it works out, 10 or approximately 10 pages or so, see if it works out if you have a different edition. But it's, I guess this would be like the third paragraph on the page where it says, concerning most of the choices of our season, we were already sure it is not easy to hide any kind of love, and young love loathes disguise. There were still 20 of that age, 11 female, 9 male, whose particular preferences we could not predict. It was not that there was a dearth of affection among us. On the contrary, among the 20, there was so much unforced affection of a quality so intense that it was clear this would be no pairing love, but something greater, embracing all our group. That the last dance would be the pairing dance itself, that raised a quiet, suspended interest in all the season's youth. There was a waiting to see how a group that seemed to live beyond the need of pairing would weave itself into the purpose of the dance. I thought that was pretty significant, where I think a lot of what they call romance novels, it centers on a single female and a single male, and whatever their trials and tribulations are, or their, happy ending, getting to the wedding altar and all that. Whereas this, I think we've already had a couple folks who have said that they are foregoing a pairing, quote unquote, romantic relationship to pursue a greater service to other black people, and whatever their goal is, or their pursuit of knowledge, the way. I thought that was pretty interesting, where you have, or I would say a significant deviation from the normal types of quote unquote love stories that we read or see, where you have a huge group of people where they are just overly affectionate with one another, to the point where there's not going to be any one girl, one boy pairing. Did that stick out as being important or relevant to any of the folks listening?
Yes.
I hadn't noticed it. I hadn't noticed the nuance of it until you pointed it out, Gus. But I can't imagine what that would mean for the long term. It's such an aberrant concept. But I'm really interested to hear what you think that is.
Mr. Demery, did you want to go? I'll comment once everybody else gets an opportunity. But Mr. Demery, did you have something you wanted to share on that?
Okay, yes. Well, one thing is that Edina, she seems to be somewhat aware, I think, on a spiritual level. She's in touch, and it's surprising to Issolusu that so many of them had obtained that level of fundi, that it was 20, when in the previous seasons there would be 1 or 2. And so it looks like over time that they are becoming wiser, the younger people. And so I thought it was interesting that when it was supposed to be a pairing, but then it started out with 11 girls and 9 boys. So there wouldn't exactly be an exact pairing anyway, even after the dance was over. And so I think they all are questioning the fact that there's something missing. They are learning these skills, but they still, something they don't know. And they had the question about the ship out there. And so it's something else that they need to know. And they've heard talk of the initiation that is above all initiation. So I think that a lot of the curiosity is is there for a lot of them. And there are some, though, that are still interested in just the parry and just the love. And others are interested in something deeper. So that's my take on it.
It continues talking about this kind of genuine group affection as opposed to it just breaking into a girl-boy thing. This is on book page 145 for me, 145. The first kind of full paragraphs on the page. It says, this is once they're actually in the dance of love ritual. It says, and then there were 11 girls left, and the dance became a thing of swift surprises, for in place of the one girl who should have leapt in readiness to breach the middle circle, 10 girls jumped as if the spirit animating them had turned them all into one individual person. They danced like one. The dancers of the middle circle were still digesting their surprise when, as swiftly as the 10 had begun, each found her exact simultaneous space and danced out triumphant to the circle of the boys, a wonder-taking breath. The 10 did not divide their choice. When they reached the outer circle, they were content to dance together near the 9 of us, those, like themselves, still seeking our final vocation. There had been no separate choices at all. The 10 had chosen the 9 together, a most unusual choice, selection filled with a nameless beauty. So just continuing again, I think for me, the significance of that, again, I think we, under the system of white supremacy, most of the quote-unquote romances and love stories that are stuffed down our throat on a constant basis, it's a very individual. It's very focused either on one character and his pursuit of the guy, her pursuit of the guy, his pursuit of the girl, or the one couple, and as I said, whatever troubles they're going through, or if it's supposed to be a happy story, however it works out for them to be happily ever after, married and with child and all that. This, I think, is much more, I think when people talk about the continent prior to coming under the destruction of white terrorism being much more communal. I think, at least to me, this signifies that it's much more communal, where it's not just about, well, I am going to pick this person because I like this person, or she likes me, or whatever. This group of 10 females, they have chosen a collective of 9, and they're just all in it together and all caring about one another. That just is very radical. I can't think of anything, any correlation in terms of a story that I've heard from the white perspective, where there's something similar to that, where you don't have that individual boy-girl affection. It's just kind of a group collective care for each other, for the entire group. And I think too, I've even heard folks say this before, that there isn't as much of that in what they term tradition. Oh, I'm echoing. There isn't as much of that in what they call traditional African literature, traditional African society, quote unquote, that focus on these individual romantic relationships, how that's something that seems to be more of a white thing, being focused on those, and how that ends up, in my opinion, kind of being a distraction from what people are supposed to do. And as I said, when I first brought this up, I think that comes up in the book more than once, where black people are saying, my focus is not my personal, selfish, romantic interest. I have a greater purpose in what I'm supposed to be doing with my time and energy, whether it's pursuit of the way, pursuit of something to help black people, pursuit of dealing with the white destroyers, having a personal interest that is larger than an individual love interest. And that comes up repeatedly in the book. And I think, too, that is something that seems to be a pretty big deviation from the standard stories that we get under racism, white supremacy, if that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense. I really believe in finding which patterns work best and mimicking those patterns. I believe in biomimicry. And in the universe, the successful patterns repeat over and over again, whether it's at a subatomic level or a stellar level. The successful patterns just repeat over and over again. And just because of the way DNA works, and if you kind of look at all the birds and all the animals, and it's that male-female thing that seems to be a pattern that gets repeated at all levels of the ecosystem. Seems to be a successful pattern, and I guess you can think of other patterns, but it's the successful ones that repeat. And I just think that male-female thing, not the group thing, is the most successful pattern. It seems to have a stability all its own, and I don't think it necessarily translates to selfishness as it does to stability. Because if anyone wants to attack you, that's where they go first. But I've had a very Eurocentric upbringing, though.
Wouldn't everyone think that in this story that it is abandoning the traditional way that a pairing takes place? Because, I mean, when we read the story of Madiba, then brides were chosen for him and his cousin. And in some of these societies, there are arranged marriages. And then others where the man chooses his bride and he gives something to the father of the woman that he chooses, whether it's cattle or whatever. But in this particular case, the women are choosing the mates. And then when you think about in Western society, the Sadie Hawkins day, where the women run or whatever and chase the man down, or in Germany, where they do Fasching, where the woman chooses a man and she cuts off his tie or whatever. And, you know, it just seems to me that I always thought traditional African pairing was, I've never heard it done in this manner. That's the only thing I'm saying. And not that it's wrong or right, but I guess it's new to me.
Yeah, I would have the same opinion. I don't, not a commentary on the correctness or incorrectness and the obviousness of the consistency with regards to male-female partnerships. Just that this seems to be a pretty big deviation from that. But even within this book, I think there are quite a few male-female pairings. We've had several of them already rolling through the book so far. This whole ritual is, you still got 3 or 4 of them around this massive deviation where this group is not going that route. But just that's normally not there at all. That's why I thought it was significant. Didn't want to overlook, we did have a cowbell as well with Bentun, I think that's how you say it. King Koranche, his son, who gets renamed Bradford George. He gets whisked away to learn how to be a slave for whites. That's supposed to be something wonderful. At this point, things have gotten so bad that that's something to aspire to. And his treat for being a slave for whites is he gets to marry some old, haggard white woman in there. Didn't want to pass over even in this text. We still have a cowbell. Let's see.
He ran away from her. Is that what it was? I didn't pre-read. He ran away from that horrid woman.
I don't know that he ran away from her, but
is that what you read? No.
No. The comment I just made was just about the fact that he got paired up with her while he was learning how to be a slave for whites. I don't think it said that he ran away from her, even though he was trying to be paired with Abena at the Dance of Love. That was, I guess, how things were supposed to work out, that she was going to be paired with him. But I think it says later. I don't know if we got that in this section. I'm confused about what's in the second audio clip or what we already covered. But I think one way or the other, it's going to say that she is still in the picture. He didn't dip out on her. She's still in the picture. I guess he was just going to do the polygamy thing and have more than one wife.
Well, the king chose to change from the traditional way, and it was his wish that the girl left within the middle circle should choose not a dancer from among ourselves, but a special guest of honor. He, the king, was bringing us. So the king had it rigged in a way so that his son could end up with the most desirable female.
And, that's so different from European culture, because all of those young women were doing whatever they could to get away from that throwback. And it was the same thing when I can't remember her name, when the young lady dissed the king by blowing off the dance he was going to have. He announced he was going to have a dance and choose his bride, and she was like, oh, wait a minute, I've chosen somebody, I won't be attending. So in this culture, none of the women want the king, because of his power. But if you look at television, I think they have that Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire, or the Bachelor with Prince, what is his name? Those women don't care. They really don't care what's wrong with those men. They just want them for their power and their money, and they will do anything. It's a completely different culture.
Idawa, that was the female that dissed Koranche. Idawa, that was her name. I think he had her partner killed in retaliation for her not accepting his overtures. But she will be making a reappearance in Chapter 5.
Okay. Can we assume that the king ended up with Idawa?
You're trying to skip ahead?
Chapter 4 kind of left a cliffhanger. We didn't know whether she spawned him, but he is the king. I mean, if he really wants to, I think he can have his way. And now he's got a son. So, who's the son's mother?
But I thought the chapter we left off on with the Taoist said that the king was doing everything to consciously suppress her memory and existence from his thoughts. It was just like he just blew her. When we left off, he blew her off and didn't want to dwell on the fact that she was still on the planet. I said it didn't where we left off. He didn't continue a relationship with her.
Okay, that would make sense because it seemed like he was inside of his conscience and making him feel inferior. And the only time he would have peace is when he did not think about her. So, I don't know, I'm just speculating to this point, but from the way that it looks like things always go, the king usually gets his way.
Yep.
Another thing I was wondering about is the differences in a king and a chief, and then why don't we have a strong figure as a chief or a king similar to the great African chief, Shaka Zulu? Somebody of some essence that's, of power, of greatness or something. It's just, it's disheartening that all of the kings don't amount to much. And I guess it's the way of the novel, though, because once you get away from the way, then you lose your purpose. You are void of a soul. And so I guess your soul just shrivels up.
From the little that I have read, it seems that white people are excellent at cutting down anyone with any potential for leadership long before they are ready to lead. And you really don't need that many people in a generation in positions of leadership. You really only need a few. And white people are very good at putting those people in prison or cutting them down or getting the askari to say those people are mad and ostracizing them. They seem to be very good at getting rid of those people before they reach their stride. So this is what I see. I think it's just hardwired in their, genetics. They come to destroy, and that's just in them to do. That's what they do. That's how they do it. It's kind of like a scorpion stinging. Oh, look, a potential leader.
We will go ahead and look to see if we can get cracking on the second audio segment. For folks who didn't get an opportunity to participate, just hang tight. If you had comments, just jot them down, and we'll make sure that we get you first up once the second audio segment concludes. We should be picking up, it would be, see if I can give out the page number really quick.
Can I say one more quick thing?
Quickly.
Okay, I thought it was interesting that over a fourth of them wanted to be farmers, and that if you wanted to perfect the art of protection, which would probably be in some of the fighting arts, they wanted you to proceed forward and then come back if you were interested in that. So I just thought that was interesting. It might be counterproductive.
Right on. I dig that as well. We should be on page 148. Well, that's me, book page 148. I guess you can add approximately 10 pages to that if you have a hard copy or a different edition of the book. But it should be, for me, it's book page 148. And it's the second paragraph on that page. So we'd be starting with, we woke up to find Isanusi standing close to our place. We asked where he had been. That's where we should be picking up at in chapter 5, book page 148. We'll go ahead and get this. And then once it concludes, we should have time for folks to share if you didn't get to participate during the first audio segment. 2000 Seasons, Mr. Ayi Kwei Armah, Context of White Supremacy. We woke up to find Isanusi standing close by our place. We asked where he had been. He laughed and said dwellers in the grove had to take care of their secrecy. He had not known if we would all return after the dance of love. You did not break into pairs then? He asked, seeing all of us emerge. We came together. He looked at us, a kind of longing look. He looked at Abena and said, this could be a new day beginning. Abena had no reply for him. We came because of you, Ankwanda said. Not because of me, Isanusi answered, but we must talk. You have sought the spring so young, and so many of you, though he shook his head, if we had not strayed so far from the way, 20 would be too few a number to laugh at. The words were a puzzle to us, except perhaps to Abena. She seemed to have some unspoken understanding of Isanusi's thoughts. We have much to talk about, Isanusi said. I came here older than you are now, though I was called the youngest of the spokesmen. The one I found here, as you have found me, was near death. It was not old age alone that had eaten her life. She had been thrown out from among us in her time. Her crime was speaking truth offensive to the powerful, singing truth. That is the way it has been among us for too many generations. All thought she had been destroyed, but my time of despair also came, and in my wandering, my soul was drawn here, and I found her. She had been waiting for one like me, a little bitterly, because the blindness of my soul made me slow in coming, and she feared she would die with none of her knowledge, the deeper knowledge of the way passed on, a fearful possibility. Some of what she told me I knew, and you already know, of our origins, of our journeys till now. But much else has been hidden from you, some wrapped in riddles whose sounds you know, but whose meaning you have yet to understand, some simply kept unrevealed to you. You have yet to learn we are not a people to nurture kings and courtiers, the parasites feeding on human souls. You have yet to understand these are recent excrescences among us, and you have yet to learn why we have found no paths to clean ourselves of them. You have been told of our migrations, but of their deeper causes You have till now been left in ignorance. You have not been told of the deformed souls among us turning into princes and kings, their minds too puny to understand that power is not something to be stolen from the whole for the individual self's consumption. Their souls too shriveled to understand reciprocity, too blind to see our way, the way. You have grown up seeing white men among us. Of their coming you have been taught none of the deeper truths. Perhaps, too, of the destruction they have already wrought and are yet to bring. In your minds you suspect nothing. We have much to talk about, but we should not begin with heavy matters. Tell me first of the dance of love. How did it go with you? We told Isanusi our news of the pairing dance. The news pleased him, but at the end of it we said we would be going back to Anoa when we got news the king had seen the folly of his wishes, and Isanusi grew pensive. He asked if we still thought kings and leaders had wisdom enough to grasp their own folly, but he waited for no answer to his own question before he began again. Such was Isanusi's conversation with us. At the time the white destroyers broke through the wall of water and arrived from the sea, the king Koranche had already shown he was greedy for power over our people, eager to wield a tyrannous power. But this was impotent greed, and he had found no means to worsen the destruction of our people. Then the white destroyers came. First, a trader wanting to buy goods from us and sell us things. With him was a hunter who the next time he came to Anoa killed a woman pointed out by the drunken king to show the power of his gun. There was a third white destroyer, a missionary who wanted to replace all knowledge of our way with fables even our children laughed at then. We told the white missionary we had such fables too, but kept them for the entertainment of those yet growing up. Fables of gods and devils and a supreme being above everything. We told him we knew soft minds needed such illusions, but that when any mind grew among us to adulthood, it grew beyond these fables and came to understand that there is indeed a great force in the world, a force spiritual and able to shape the physical universe. But that force is not something cut off, not something separate from ourselves. It is an energy in us, strongest in our working, breathing, thinking together as one people. weakest when we are scattered, confused, broken into individual, unconnected fragments. Among the white destroyers, there was no respect for anything we could say. They had come determined to see nothing, to listen to no one, bent solely on the satisfaction of their greed, of which we had ample news. But the king was infatuated with the white destroyers, and would not heed the people's will, as quick in its expression as it was clear to tell the white men to go. The white destroyers had brought the king gifts to entertain his crippled soul, together with a hot drink to burn his throat, and further addle his brain with a grand, illusory happiness. It was this drink, that first taste of which prompted the king to point to the unfortunate woman, first victim here of the white hunter. Some among our people shot flaming arrows into the white men's ship one dark night. The ship withdrew down the river to the castle at Poano. The king was angered. He tried all ruses to find out who had brought together the arrow makers. But the king did not find an easy path. For what purpose was the search? Isanusi had asked in the court. The king, in the rashness of his anger, was drawn into an admission he wanted to inflict a punishment upon the arrow makers. Wrongdoers, he called them. Isanusi asked, what wrong did they do, the arrow makers? They drove away a pest. Was that the wrong they did? The question drew an unforced no from the court. Or was this not a pest? A pest indeed, the others answered. These white men are not just pests, Isanusi said. They are dangerous animals. They are destroyers. They are killers. The court was murmuring its approval when the flatterer, Odomfer, seizing the spokesman's staff, shut everybody up. Odomfer argued that in a matter of such importance, the arrow makers did wrong not to seek the king's permission first. Now what the court murmured was the confusion of its mind, and Odomfer pressed his advantage, casting grave insinuations about the danger in doing things behind the king's back. Isanusi allowed Odomfer's words to reach their crest, and then he rose. Strange is the community, he said, his voice soft and slow, in which the common good cannot be sought without permission. 3 seasons have passed since a leopard came, you all remember, and devoured Kotu, son of Ikoku, Fundi in the art of making drums. Sibiri, daughter of Kamiya, on her own initiative, took a goat and set a trap for the creature. Akpofur, the same who later married Sibiri, killed the beast, losing his left hand doing it, and we all breathed again. Perhaps here my memory does me wrong. Set it right for me then. With whose permission did Sabiri and Akpofor rid us of the wild predator? There was silence in the court, chagrin on the face of the king's most faithful flatterer, Odomfer, and hatred in the staring eyeballs of the king. Odomfer boiled, especially that one so much younger than he, younger than any of the spokesmen, could with so little effort so conquer him in reasoning and in eloquence. Isanusi continued, "Among us no permission is necessary to do ourselves good. Permission is a question when a stranger comes among us and requests to settle. We ask about his character, the background he comes from, the desire he carries in his mind. If we are satisfied, we embrace him. That is the way all those from Kakan, from Boma, from Guelo, and from Nkole came among us to be a part of us, so that their good would be our good. Now this other permission the white men have been pressing for, let us look at it. First, they do not want to be part of us. Their good is not necessarily our good. Then, since they are not of us and have no wish to be of us, they belong to a community we have yet to see, and the purpose of their presence here among us is to do that community good, not us. Have we forgotten the cause of our long wandering? Did we not learn near the desert how priests and warriors are twin destroyers, the priests attacking the victim's mind, the warrior breaking bodies still inhabited by resisting wills? We are not a trading people. We have always held parasites in contempt. We have seen traders and their work. They and their goods work on the will, steadily, constantly, supplementing the disintegrative work of soldiers and priests on bodies and minds. The traders are creators of unreasonable desires. Where the priest fails to make his victims willing slaves, and the soldier is impotent to make living slaves, his violence only producing dead bodies, the trader enslaves the will itself, and men are led to want their own enslavement, thinking it is only the pleasure of owning things they want. All honest people who have come to us have come because they sought to do themselves good among us as part of our people, and they said so. These white men, they do not want to be a part of us, but here they have come claiming they have crossed the sea from wherever it is they come from just to do us good. They are pretenders. They are liars. We have asked them for nothing. We should not let them come among us. They have no desire to live with us. They will live against us. Do you not hear how they have started their sojourn among us with insults and with killing? Or do you no longer recognize death? Do you not recognize insults when strangers come claiming they know what is good for us and we don't know it? The king tried subterfuge after lying subterfuge, but a decision was reached. The white men would not be permitted to return. They would have no permission to build their factory or their church if they came again to ask. The king was defeated for the time, but his greed was not in any way diminished. The king sent secret messages to Poano, to the white men. The white men answered the king secretly. Secretly, the white men and the king exchanged gifts, tokens of their mutual esteem. In his messages, the king indicated with rising insistence his longing for the fiery rum, keener than his desire for any of the other promised gifts. The white men answered they would be glad to give him all the rum he wanted as soon as his people changed their minds. The king complained he could not fight his people's will. From the white missionary, a message came. It said it was an incontrovertible teaching of the white religion that a king had a right, a duty in fact, to impose his will strongly on his people. For to the white men, the king was always the head, the people merely the body. Replied the king, I do not have the strength. Said the white trader, we can help with that if you will be a faithful friend of ours, for that is what friends are for. The king said secretly, yes, but let us act in secret. And the missionary spoke the final word in his message. Secrecy, yes, at the appropriate time. But sometimes you, the head, will have to make the heaviness of your authority felt, and felt openly. As for strength to do it, fear nothing as long as you keep faith with us, your friends. The strength of your friends is your strength also, as long as you take good care to keep our friendship. Isanusi, hearing news of secret visits between the king and the white men, asked his questions in open court. The king lied, denied everything, and in court, the prudent began to suspect Isanusi of the disease of unreasonable suspicion. Not for long. The white destroyers returned one sudden night and sent flaming iron flying into the exact area where the fundies of the spear, the arrow, and the bow have always made their home, killing 300 human beings in one night alone. In the morning, a people disoriented by the violence of the night before saw 2 white flags flying in the undecided breeze. One flew on the white destroyer's ship, its twin above the palace of the king. The white destroyers came to land. The king greeted them with affection. The king was taken aboard the white destroyer's ship. He returned with whole canoe loads of things, had them loaded on the bank onto the heads of his servants, and preceded them into his palace. These goods were announced as a gift, a present to the king and his court, and a prelude to negotiations. The white men, having come to renew their request for permission to set up on our land a factory, a hunting station, and a church. By the time the king emerged from the dreams induced by the white destroyer's drink, the moon had disappeared. He distributed the gifts to his hangers-on by firelight. Among the courtiers that night, greed replaced the last remaining shred of wisdom. Isanusi, unable any longer to contemplate the scene, walked out in disgust and despair. Among those he had counted as potential allies on the people's side, he had thought of 5. 3 were at once won over to the king at the sight of presents supposedly sent specifically for them. The remaining 2 were first drawn into confusion, then their will was reduced to nothing, so that though they still with their minds were able to perceive treachery in the king's behavior, they quite lost the ability to act on their perceptions. Their silence left the king free to claim his actions had the force of tradition behind them. Their inaction left Isanusi facing a choice of desperation: to fight alone and therefore doomed battle against the king with not a single ally and on the king's own ground, or to withdraw completely from the court and therefore from the community under the power of the court, unless, like the other courtiers, he too changed his will and agreed to be bought. For the king had tried friendly approaches to win Isanusi to his side. He had told him what the white men ultimately wanted: permission to mine the hills of Anoa for gold, and the court's agreement to the establishment of plantations for spices in great demand in the white men's country, to get our people to labor in the mines and on the plantations. The white destroyers wanted the king to fill our people's minds with tales of the goodness of laboring for whites. The prophecy of Anoa, the warnings against servitude, prologue to the spokesman's oath he had taken, hit Isanusi's mind with a wounding sharpness. He remembered the vow to speak truth, the first formal vow, and the last in the initiation of masters in the art of eloquence. Isanusi walked through Anoa looking for solace in a place destroyed, his spirit heavy with the realization things had gone far, had changed past rottenness. Where the arrow makers lived, Isanusi saw in the dark the form of the debris caused by the white destroyer's iron, and he saw the people at a general wake for the dead. Women, recognizing him, came to ask him why the king had not come to join the preparations for the battle against the white murderers. They asked what sense there was in the things they had seen. The procession of carriers taking things from the white destroyer's ship to the palace of the king. They asked Isanusi why, instead of clarity, there was so much confusion everywhere. Isanusi had no answers to give. In his own spirit, the turmoil was twin to the peoples around him. He walked on through the night, a fugitive from realities he was still reluctant to understand, from questions he was impotent to answer. A messenger came running after Isanusi, requesting him to return to the court. The king wanted to consult with him. Isanusi returned. The king said again there was a matter to be explained to the people, and only Isanusi had the eloquence to do the work of persuasion. Isanusi asked, "What matter?" Said the king, "You know what happened with the white men." Isanusi said, "I do not know what happened with the white men." The king explained he wanted Isanusi to soothe the people's inflamed feelings about the killing and the destruction the white men had brought. All the king said was the lesson was already clear. What we now say to the people does not matter. We can even say it was a mistake the white men made. Let us say they had wanted to fire the guns to show me their respect, as indeed I have seen them do at Poano for Otobra. Let us tell the people something like the wind turning the hot iron balls the wrong way. Eh, Isanusi? Isanusi made sure he had not heard wrong. What the king wanted him to do was to use his gift of eloquence to mystify the people. Then Isanusi rejected the assignment, pleading incompetence. The king urged him to reconsider, to accept. The people respect you. They listen to you, Isanusi, and they believe what you say. The king promised Isanusi gifts, promised him more gifts, asked Isanusi what his heart desired, asked him what would give comfort to his tongue. Isanusi considered the heinousness of all that had already happened, considered the terror of his own position, how he was being forced to fit into the strategies of destruction. And in his mind he conceived a plan. Isanusi undertook to speak to the people. Isanusi spoke to the people. He spoke truth to the people, and the truth raised a fury among the king and his hangers-on. The king and his courtiers declared Isanusi mad and had him thrown out of the people's protection. Odumfer the flatterer was picked to do the work of deceit Isanusi had refused to do. His lying tongue, however, failed to persuade the people. When the people heard what the king's wishes were, the bravest among them went home to prepare their weapons. The following morning they converged upon the palace. Had they succeeded in the realization of what was in their heart and mind, it was their intention to destroy the white destroyers and their ship also. But from the palace, the white men's guns in the hands of zombie guards, the new Askaris brought against us by the white destroyers from the sea, exterminated them. Immediately following the break with the King Isanusi's spirit fell into a state of confusion, and his mind knew utter despair. He saw the things happening, and disgust grew in him, but all his love was in Anoa still. Every place here had important memories for him, even those places where painful things had happened. All such memories had acquired a sweetness now, the sweetness of the whole of life remembered where the navel lies buried. Bitterness itself to Isanusi was any contemplation of exile, so he made no preparations to leave Anoa. Declared a madman, he continued quietly to live in the place of his birth. Most men, at first, uncertain what next the king might do, knowing Koranche for a vindictive man and not wishing to be trapped in another blood quarrel of his making, forbade their sisters to give Isanusi food. The women said nothing against their brother's careful warnings. At night and in other secret ways they brought Isanusi food and whatever else he needed. A place to sleep? That too became easy for him. A woman, a widow known for the beauty of her mind, her will, and her body, came to Isanusi openly by the river, and calling him by his name and his mother's name, asked him to come to her house whenever he wanted to, and to look upon it as his home. Isanusi thanked the woman, Idawa. Isanusi knew Idawa, who did not, knew her and remembered her first defiance of King Koranche. It was known Idawa had not simply in her younger days returned the king's presents of courtship, but had actually insulted him with truth, saying she would never spread her thighs wide enough for any fat worm of a man to enter her. Further, she had said everybody knew a fat body was always the house of a rotten soul. Truth it was, before the ancestors, the king was fat. All men laughed secretly at him. In our own 10th season, we had heard him called he whose penis is hidden from himself. Idawa, who had at that time said openly what others would rather whisper, called Isanusi to her home. Isanusi loved Idawa as she loved him, but his spirit found no rest in that single love. From one new moon to the next, for 2 seasons, Isanusi wandered alone without hope, thinking of our people's arrival here, feeling the call against all prohibitions to go where Noliwe and Ngome themselves had gone in their search for the source. Isanusi wandered into the 5th grove and there found Ndola, aged, in despair, but still alive. Ndola, too, in her time had been a fundi in the art of eloquence, a poet, a singer. She sang truth at a public ceremony when the king, at that time the moron Tutu, craved only pleasant songs of deceit. Ndola, too, had been declared insane, a salutary madness, for there is no need to destroy the mad physically. She had been left to fend for herself, unhelped by any human being, and she had spent her life after that waiting in the grove for the arrival of another soul who could see the truth and act on it. What she knew, things that had been hidden from Isanusi, she revealed in an anxious rush, and not many days after she had unburdened herself, she died there in the grove. Isanusi buried Ndola and went away from Anoa, went to the town of Poano, and for 4 seasons lived there. There he saw the victory of the white destroyers, the utter destruction of souls. He saw there was no fundi, there was not first of all a prostitute. Experts in the art of eloquence he saw bought to speak for thieves. Experts in the art of singing he saw bought to sing the praises not just of one parasite, the king, but also of any bloated passer who could pay their paltry price.
Context of White Supremacy. For folks who would like to participate, the number again is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. That number one more time is 760-569-7676. And the code is 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Please do not wait until the last minute. The folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open.
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, as the novel unfolds, it is getting more and more bleak. It is the others, Isanusi, has to me been elevated to a point to where the people trusted him more than the king. The king has consistently agreed with the whites and was secretly accepting gifts and plotting against his own people. The people overruled him, and they chose not to deal with the whites. But I guess the white destroyers are thinking that with the help of the missionaries and trying to persuade the minds of the people through religion, they would wait out for a period of time. But then when they got to the point that, the greed would overtake them, then they attacked the people and strategically sent the cannons, pointed the cannons towards the only brave portion of the people, those that knew how to protect themselves with arrows and spears. They killed massive amounts of people, which would accomplish two things. It would leave the people defenseless and also demoralize them because of the deaths. And no matter what Synopsis does, trying to keep the people together because of their lack of will and the relentless massacres from the whites, they are beginning to subside. And we have Adawa comes back into the picture, and she's there to aid Synopsis, but it looks as if things has gotten too far away from the way, and now a new set of Askaris are coming back on the scene. The military-type guards that are used against the people. And the white people are arming them with firearms. So I really, don't see much hope for the people.
This is Lashes. This is Lashes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On page 160 of my book, which will be 150, 149, maybe on the PDF. I found this one quite interesting. At the bottom of my page, it says, Synopsis continued, among us no permission is necessary to do ourselves good. Permission is a question when a stranger comes amongst us and requests to settle. We ask about his character, the background he comes from, the desire he carries in his mind. If we are satisfied, we embrace him. That is the way all those from Cancan, from Boma, from Guelo, and from Ankole came among us to be a part of us so that their good would be our good. When I read that portion, I couldn't help the same pattern of behavior which is displayed in the show The Walking Dead. When the group acquires a new member, they always ask the person, who are you, your name, what's your background, what are your intentions, and then the group decides whether or not to take on the new incomer. So I thought that was quite interesting too. I'll mute my line for right now.
I have two things that have confused me, and they keep coming up. And the one is where Koranche came from. I mean, we know that he is the youngest son of the three, which is kind of strange, but that's what Kim Jong-un did. His youngest son is ruling South Korea. And Koranche, he's the youngest son. But in the part in the past where it says that Koranche had heard from his family how their ascendancy had been attained, at important points he felt momentarily terrified at the flimsiness of the edifice, a structure resting neither on moral power nor on real material power, but mainly on mystification. And it never actually says how his family ascended to the throne or ascended to be kings instead of be caretakers. And the other thing I'm starting to realize, I guess from what was said earlier, is that mystification, what he means by mystification is sort of like that old saying I've said before, are you going to believe me or your own lying eyes? It's like you do something to people and then you go, wait a minute. It's not what you think. It's not what you think you saw. It was this. So maybe mystification is just, it's just misdirection, just lying about what you just did. So I think that was it. And the other one I haven't found yet, but it was something about elephants. I couldn't understand what they were saying. But am I missing something about where Koranche's family, how they became kings, how they ascended? Is it stated?
This is Lashes. I do believe in either chapter 3 or 4. It mentions how Koranche and his people, they impose power for themselves, upon themselves, onto the people who were already weak-spirited. So once they saw the white people coming from the sea, so how they were acting and how the Koranche people, since they too have a weak spirit as well, were attracted to that power, the desire, and things that the white men were bringing, they too wanted that and imposed themselves and called themselves king, to my recollection, in chapter 3 or chapter 4. That's
they just stated it. They just said so just we are.
That's what I got.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Okay.
And that happened because the community was already fractured from their cultural ways of doing things. So that's how it was happening. And he used force along with the alliance, pseudo-friendship he has with the white men to impose his so-called will, which he even states he can't really impose or crack the will of the people, some of them anyway, but he needed the white men's help to do that. So that's how he became successful. It was like simultaneously, like we said last week, with the corrupted spirit of the people, for example, Koranche, and simultaneously with the oncoming of the second phase of the white predators, this time the Europeans.
Yeah, because I was getting the impression that he was, just kind of tripping along as king, and no one was taking him seriously. Everyone was going through their training and their stages and their family without the king or his son, and they thought that they were all jokes, and everyone was pretty happy. And the thing that they learned not to do is when you see a fool, you're not supposed to ignore him because something's going to happen, and he's going to be your downfall. But I think that's what happened with him. I think everyone was pretty happy, just ignoring him and knowing that he was a fool. And then the white people came along, and he got a power base.
That also coincides into the previous sessions we had where they were warned after the first phase with the Arabs, like, this is what you should not be doing. But a certain generation did not take heed to those warnings, and they continued to go along into the second phase with the other white predators, the Europeans, and they did not develop what we call a counter-racist code in dealing with the Europeans of that time. So that's where they failed. They did not have what we call a counter-racist code.
Can I be heard?
You're a little low, if you could speak up.
Oh, yeah. Greetings, everyone. This is 1184. I think it even goes back earlier in the book when it was talking about being too generous to where, because I get from this book that they seem to be there's a lot of outward focus going on. First with the Arabs and then with the Europeans when they came. I heard it mentioned that things that they had was so valuable, like their technology, their trinkets and all that. They seem to be fascinated by those types of things. But it just seems like there was a lot of outward focus, fascination with outsiders, a lack of any real administration in society at that time to evaluate outsiders and screen them. Like, there didn't seem to be a way of protecting themselves from it. Like, that's one thing I got from it, and it's like, let me see. The part about when the king had the dance going on, and it was supposed to determine which female liked which males. It seemed like he set it up so that it seemed like that was part of their culture at that time. That's the impression I got. And it was like when that female that he wanted to be with his son, and he probably expected her to do that because that would be, she was desirable, and then he was supposed to be desirable because he was a king's son, and when she didn't behave that way, then it's like he staged the guy to get up and speak and say that, this guy, his son has been around a white man, and he's almost like a white man. And, it seemed to be pretty widespread, like a white type of worship going on. Like, that seemed like that implied that there was pretty widespread fascination with white folks, to me, when they made that statement in the narrative. And when she didn't want his son, he didn't. He used another mechanism of the culture, which is like to drive the person out and stuff, But it's like it was like, to me, it was like staged when he did the dance thing, because there was already falsehood going on with him, because he was seeking his own self gain in a sense. I'm also getting like, they all know that something is off, in their identity, and that they're trading like dignity for something, and it's like, I got that from it.
Is someone snoring in the background?
Yeah, that's why I didn't want the phone too close to my son is in the background. So
Yeah.
I can't get around it.
Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I love
You
this
can
book.
mute my line too.
One of the best books. And I thought it was interesting how he threw that in there about that rum. And you know how Europeans are with their alcoholic beverages. I mean, this book is beautiful. I'm enjoying it so much. And I wanted to ask, why is there a need for a king? Why any other callers on the line? Why do you think there's always a need for a king? Why is that so important? I heard what Lasha said, but I mean, yeah.
In chapter 3, it says that among a people hustling into doing, the fearless are kings, and the thoughtless always follow kings. So the king is needed because nobody's thinking, and the people are becoming zombie-like. They're losing their souls, so they'll follow just about anything at this point.
Hear, hear.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the previous caller's question, why was there a need for a king? I agree with what the callers on the line have said, but one thing that stood out in my mind when you asked that question is that the white people had a total distortion of what a king was. Remember, early in the text, it was pointed out that they thought that the king actually owned people and could give them away. And that was a concept that they were unfamiliar with, that's not the king's role. The king doesn't own anything, no more than anybody owns land. So that kind of stood out in my mind when you asked that question. Gus, I got distracted for a minute. Where are we up to in the PDF? What page did you stop on?
Let's see. We stopped at. I moved off the page when we got involved in the discussion. Let's see. Okay, we are past page 159, like book page 159.
Okay. All right. I read a little farther on, so it hasn't gotten funny yet. Not this session. The next session, it'll probably get funny. I had a couple of comedy relief moments in there. At least it did for me, because I found that this portion of the reading was extremely difficult emotionally, and the level of victimization in here and the confusion. I don't know if you guys talked about that yet. Like I said, I got distracted. It's very familiar. It's a 2014 victimization. On page 157 at the top in the PDF, where it says the remaining two were first drawn into confusion, then their will was reduced to nothing, so that though they still with their minds were able to perceive treachery in the king's behavior, they quite lost the ability to act on their perceptions. That's us today. That's our level of victimization. What the previous caller talked about with the rum, I noted that as well. The fire water made the king an alcoholic. That's what they do. They did it to the natives of North America. That's their MO. Distort their brains, be it with the stuff that they smoked, or in the Arabs at the beginning of the book, or the fire water right here. White friends. That's another note I made. White friends, no white friends. They were all about making a friend out of the king. Didn't turn out too well. I don't know. On page 159, in the second paragraph in the PDF, the last sentence, it says, then Inusi rejected the assignment, pleading incompetence. Did anybody find that codified?
Can you say the page number again? I'm sorry.
In the PDF, it's page 159. It's in the second paragraph. The paragraph begins, Isanusi made sure he had not heard wrong. What the king wanted him to do. He was talking about when he wanted Isanusi to say some things to the people, to lie to them about what the white people had come there for and what the white people wanted from them. It says Isanusi made sure he had not heard wrong, that the king wanted him to do that what the king wanted him to do was to use his gift of eloquence to mystify the people. Then Isanusi rejected the assignment, pleading incompetence. I thought that, in my opinion, like we always say, I don't know nothing. I don't know, plead incompetence. I just thought that maybe that was a codified strategy that he used. I'll mute my line.
We did our 3 hours. We should be back next week, and we'll be back in Chapter 5. I think Chapter 5 is going to go into the week after next as well, because it's a pretty chunky chapter. I think we are on PDF book page 162. I think that's where we left off at this week. That's what we'll be picking up at next week. I think it's 162, right after we have the return of Idawa, and she's there to help out Isanusi after he has been excommunicated by King Koranche. I think this chapter we had this was another illustration. I think Karma had said before about wanting the people to fight back. I think some other people had said that too, and I think we had that this week where some of they said some of the more brave members decided that they were going to go fight back, and the whites exterminated them. Did not work. And also, I think this is going to be coming up more next week, so we'll have time to ponder on it if people think it's important. Isanusi talking about being lonely, being isolated, understanding the peril of their situation and what needs to be done, but feeling like there's so much confusion and that he was perhaps the only one or one of few who had a correct understanding of what was going on and what they needed to be doing, what they needed to not be doing, but feeling very isolated and by himself in this understanding, and how that ended up being almost a kind of punishment in and of itself. I think that sounds very familiar with what I have heard from many folks who listen to this program, and or many folks just in general who deal with, honestly, racism and the problems we face in the system of white supremacy. But again, that'll be coming up next week. With that, we will be back tomorrow. Compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Tune in, observations, workplace racism, other thoughts folks would like to share, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I posted the PDF. I think I got everybody who emailed me. If I missed, feel free to drop me a line again, but I'm trying to permanently resolve that problem. The PDF is linked in the description for today's episode at Black Talk Radio Network, so you can download it there. I also posted it on my Facebook page. I had tweeted it before, but I will tweet it out again so that you can just download it. It just says 2000 Seasons, forshare.com, so you can download it there. You'll have the whole thing that way. If you emailed me and I didn't get it to you, or if you would like a copy and you have not emailed me, it should be right there. If you're friends on Facebook, you'll see it. It's I put it as a comment when I posted for today's broadcast. And again, it is, if you go to Black Talk Radio Network for today's episode specifically, the 5th study session, it's linked. You can just click on the book title, 2000 Seasons, and that will take you to the page where you can download the PDF if you need it to study, to follow along, or if you just want to have it in your digital library, it should be there. At any rate, again, if you are not able to listen in live and you have comments that you would like to share, questions and or comments, you can email me and we'll try to get them in on the program. If you have more current commentary, that would be grand, because we are, at this point, we are about halfway through the book. Actually, a tad beyond the halfway point in the book. So it would be better if you have comments that are closer to where we are right now, as opposed to things that are like chapter 1. But I mean, not that that stuff is not relevant, but it would be better if we have commentary that's a little closer to where we are in the book now, since we have made quite a bit of progress and are more than halfway done. Anywho, thanks for all of the folks who participated. I hope it has been a constructive investment of your Friday evening. We'll be back, installment number 6 next week, and we'll be back with the compensatory call-in tomorrow. Invest if you think the program is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Listener-supported, counter-racist radio. Invest if you think we are doing constructive work. You can also help out just by sharing information about the broadcast. If you have a blog, website, Facebook, Twitter, whatever the case, post links to the program. You can select specific episodes that you like, specific guests that you like. You can put the actual widget, so you can put the player. If you have a website or what have you, you can put that on your blog as well. That way people can listen to the content without navigating away from your page. But that is very helpful as well in getting it out there for folks to know about the text. With that, we will go ahead and wrap things up. I will get our prayer for folks before we wrap up. Let's see here. I wanted to get one of the ones that listeners have written in. I guess I'll send that out again as well. If you would prefer to write in a prayer, if you don't particularly want to say a prayer online, if you prefer to email one, you can do that as well, and we'll just read it online. But here we go. To the creator of the universe, the one who is complete in every way, who is all-knowing, and the giver of all things necessary to produce justice, truth, harmony, and balance in our lives. We humbly ask for your protection and guidance through a maze of deception, self-hatred, anti-blackness, exploitation, and white terrorism. We long for the spiritual connection of the Ma'atic order, the oneness that only you can manifest. We pray for clarity of thought and understanding of universal spiritual principles. Open our mind's eyes so that we will no longer be bamboozled or hoodwinked. We reclaim our identity and self-respect stolen from us by years of oppression. We are the parent people, and we accept our responsibility to the universe to replace the current global system of white supremacy with a system of justice. O one who is blacker than a trillion midnights, grant us this petition as reward for our patience and perseverance in this hostile land. Ashe. Context of White Supremacy, signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
I'm a victim, brother.
No problem. You're a victim.
Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.